Take her name off the founder wall, Malik said, lifting his glass as if he were making a harmless little request. Guests came to see power, not pity. His family laughed. His mistress smiled beneath the chandelier lights. And at the back of the ballroom, his wife stood still, one hand closed around an old brass key tied to a blue cord. Nobody in that room understood what that key meant. Nobody knew the coast-to-capital luxury empire they were all drinking to had been built by the same woman Malik had just erased with one sentence. And nobody, not his mother, not his sister, not the woman wearing his arm like a crown, was ready for what would happen when the real owner finally walked to the stage. Stay with me, because this story does not begin with champagne, cameras, and betrayal. It begins with salt air, cracked wooden floors, and a girl who learned very early that if your hands know how to build shelter, the world can never truly make you homeless. Her name was Ayana, and on the night this story opened, Ayana Dlamini was standing in the grand sapphire ballroom of the Kisiwa Crown Hotel, watching the man she married remove her from the life she created. The event was called 15 Years of Golden Palm Retreats. 15 years of the most talked-about luxury eco-resort brand on the continent. 15 years of beachfront villas, celebrity weddings, private safaris, rooftop launches, travel magazine covers, and impossible waiting lists. Ministers were there. Investors were there. Fashion people, media people, tourism giants, and socialites who never remembered the names of workers but always remembered the names of brands. They were all there. At the center of the ballroom stood a tall, silk-draped wall. Behind it was supposed to be the founder portrait. For 15 years, the public had never seen the true founder of Golden Palm Retreats. They knew Malik Dlamini, the handsome CEO with the smooth voice, the perfect suits, and the face every magazine loved. They knew how he smiled for cameras. They knew how he held microphones like he had been born with one in his hand. But they did not know who had found the first piece of land, who had scrubbed floors, who had cooked for the first 6 guests herself, who had slept in the office so salaries would go out on time, who had drawn the first floor plans on the back of a food supplier's invoice. Tonight, they were supposed to find out. Ayana knew exactly whose portrait was behind that silk curtain. It was hers. But Malik had already decided the truth was not glamorous enough for the world. He stood near the stage in a cream tuxedo jacket, his mother Odessa on one side, his younger sister Talia on the other, and his mistress Sade glowing nearby in a gold dress designed to be noticed from the moon. Talia leaned close to him and whispered something quick. Odessa, proud and polished and cold-eyed, looked toward the covered portrait and shook her head once. Then Malik gave the crew his order. Take her name off the wall. The technician hesitated. Malik smiled, but it was the kind of smile men use when they want obedience dressed up as charm. Tonight is about the future, he said. Use the new visual. And just like that, the screen beside the stage lit up. Not with the hidden founder's portrait, but with a giant campaign image of Sade, chin lifted, jeweled shoulders shining, standing in one of Golden Palm's presidential suites like she had built every brick herself. The room clapped. Some clapped because others were clapping. Some clapped because they were confused. Some clapped because rich rooms often applaud first and think later. Malik raised his glass. There she is, he said into the microphone. The woman who represents the elegance, beauty, and bold new era of Golden Palm. Bold new era. 3 small words, 3 dangerous lies. His mistress smiled. His mother looked pleased. His sister signaled the media team to keep filming. And Ayana, standing near the service entrance in a plain midnight blue gown, watched her own story being stolen in public. She did not cry. She did not shout. She did not run. She only touched the brass key inside her palm with her thumb, once, slowly, like a person touching a scar she has finally stopped hiding from. A waiter passed her with a tray and paused. "Madam, are you all right?" Ayana looked at the stage. "I am now," she said softly. He did not understand. Nobody there did. Not yet. At the far side of the ballroom, a gray-haired man in a dark suit stood beside one of the marble pillars, holding a slim leather document case. He had been watching Ayana all evening. He was not smiling. He was not drinking. And when Malik ordered her name removed from the wall, the older man did not look surprised. He looked ready. His name was Mr. Kamau. And before the night ended, one sentence from his mouth would collapse a kingdom built on borrowed credit. But to understand why Ayana did not break in that ballroom, you have to go back. Back before the hotels. Before the investors. Before the magazines and the red carpets, and the people who suddenly pronounce your name correctly once your success can make them money. You have to go back to the coast. Ayana was born in a small seaside town where the wind carried salt through every open window and old houses seemed to breathe with the tide. Her mother died when she was young. Her father, a fisherman with kind eyes and tired shoulders, did what he could until the sea took more from him than it ever gave back. When he too was gone, Ayana was raised by her grandmother, Mama Zuri, who owned a 6-room guest house painted white and blue, 2 streets from the water. It was not fancy. The floorboards groaned. The curtains faded in the sun. Sometimes the plumbing complained like an old man. But the place was clean. The food was hot. And every guest who entered was treated like dignity itself had opened the door for them. Mama Zuri used to say, "Luxury is not marble, child. Luxury is being expected and welcomed." Ayana remembered that. She remembered everything. She remembered polishing brass handles before sunrise. She remembered folding sheets so sharply they could stand on their own. She remembered her grandmother teaching her how to greet guests by name, how to read silence, how to notice who was grieving, who was traveling for business, who needed tea without asking for it, who needed to be left alone. Hospitality, Mama Zuri taught her, was not servitude. It was power with grace. A home can be one room, Mama Zuri would say, while counting the week's cash into a biscuit tin. But if people leave feeling more whole than when they arrived, then you have built something big. On the day Ayana turned 16, Mama Zuri opened an old wooden drawer behind the reception desk and placed a brass room key into her hand. The key was heavy for its size. Its edges were smoothed by years of use. Around it was tied a blue cord, faded from sunlight. "This was the key to the first room I ever owned," Mama Zuri said. "When I had only one room, I protected it like a kingdom. Not because it was expensive, because it was mine. Remember this. The person who holds the keys should never forget how doors were built." Ayana kept that key. Years later, when there were villas, penthouses, airstrips, and investors in imported loafers, she still kept it. Because that little guest house was where Golden Palm truly began. Not in a tower, not in a boardroom, not in the hands of a man with a polished smile. In that guest house. In a girl who noticed everything. At 19, Ayana saw what tourists were coming for. Not just beaches, not just sunsets. They wanted experience, warmth, story, beauty rooted in place. Most luxury brands came in, erased the local soul, and sold foreign taste at triple price. Ayana wanted the opposite. She wanted elegance that still smelled like sea air and cardamom tea. She wanted carved wood made by local hands, fabrics from local weavers, menus built from family recipes, service that felt human instead of rehearsed. She wanted Africa presented with pride, not apology. So she started small. An abandoned coastal house was going cheap because everybody said it was too damaged, too remote, too risky. Ayana borrowed money from a cooperative, sold the little jewelry she had, convinced 2 cousins to help her repaint the place, and spent 6 months doing repairs with blistered hands and a notebook full of impossible plans. When the first 3 rooms opened, she did the cleaning herself. When the first guests arrived, she cooked their breakfast. When the first booking website asked for photos, she used a second-hand phone and stood on a chair to capture the sea from the upstairs window. And slowly, people came. Then more people came. Then they returned with friends. Travel writers started talking. A photographer posted the sunrise from her rooftop terrace. A couple from Johannesburg booked the place for an anniversary and said it felt like peace had been given linen sheets. Within 2 years, her tiny retreat was making money. Within 4, she had opened a second property farther inland. Within 6, Golden Palm Retreats had become the kind of name people said carefully, with curiosity first and envy later. That is when Ayana met Malik. Back then, Malik was not a powerful man. He was a charming sales consultant with beautiful teeth, expensive dreams, and very little discipline. He knew how to talk. He knew how to walk into a room and leave with 3 business cards, 2 promises, and somebody else's confidence. He made investors feel clever. He made journalists laugh. He made women feel seen. And in those early days, he made Ayana feel understood. Ayana was brilliant, but she was private. She loved building more than performing. She loved structure more than spotlight. At meetings, people often overlooked her until she started speaking numbers. Then they leaned in. But by then, Malik had already seen the gap between her genius and the world's appetite for personality. "I can be the bridge," he told her once after a tense investor dinner. "Let me handle the noise, you handle the substance." It sounded like partnership, and at first, it was. He helped raise expansion capital. He went on morning shows. He charmed travel editors. He made space in rooms that had not been designed for quiet women with real authority. Ayana appreciated that. Then she fell in love with him. Or maybe with who he seemed to be. They married in a small ceremony by the water. She wore a simple ivory dress with beaded sleeves. After the guests left, she slipped the brass room key onto a fresh cord and tucked it into the box with her wedding jewelry. Not because she was done with it, because she believed she would never have to hold the keys alone again. For a while, they were happy. He called her the mind of the empire. He told people his wife was extraordinary. He looked at her like her seriousness was a kind of light. And Golden Palm kept growing. A safari lodge in Kenya. A city hotel in Lagos. A vineyard retreat outside Cape Town. Private island partnerships. Awards. Magazine covers. Waiting lists. Panels. Influencers. Money. Real money. The kind that changes how relatives speak to you. The kind that makes strangers laugh too loudly at weak jokes. The kind that reveals character faster than hardship sometimes does. The cameras loved Malik. And the more they loved him, the more he stood in front of Ayana's work, until eventually, to the world, he became the work. Articles called him a visionary. Panels introduced him as founder. Travel magazines printed his face above headlines about design philosophy he had never once contributed to. At first, Ayana corrected people. Then Malik would wave it off. "It's branding," he told her. "People need a simple story." A simple story. That is what lies always call themselves before they grow teeth. Ayana allowed it longer than she should have, because she was building, always building. And because women who know how to carry weight are often the last to notice when they have become furniture in their own lives. Then came Malik's family. Odessa had never truly accepted Ayana. To Odessa, her son had married beneath his possibilities. Ayana was too quiet, too self-contained, too difficult to impress because she did not worship performance. Talia was worse in another way. Sharp, ambitious, and camera-hungry. She joined the company's brand side and quickly learned how much easier life becomes when people believe your brother is the genius. Odessa liked title. Talia liked image. Malik liked attention. And together, they created the perfect climate for betrayal. Then came Sade. Sade was beautiful, clever, and rising fast online as a luxury travel personality. She knew lighting, angles, audience retention, and the kind of smile that promised aspiration without ever revealing truth. Golden Palm hired her first for a campaign, then for another. Soon she was everywhere, on giant banners, reels, launches, press tours, yacht parties, destination weddings. She called Malik brilliant in interviews. He called her the future of hospitality branding. People started asking if she was more than ambassador. By then, she already was. Ayana noticed the late-night messages first, then the sudden work trips with no clear schedules, then the expensive gifts hidden beneath ordinary lies. Then the way Malik began speaking to her as if she were a department he had already outsourced. He interrupted her in meetings. He corrected her in public. He stopped inviting her to interviews. At home, he treated her kindness like background music. Still, Ayana kept building. Because there are women who will finish the roof while the man beside them is secretly auctioning the furniture. One evening, Odessa came to Ayana's study with tea and a folder. Odessa never brought tea without purpose. She set the tray down, smiled too smoothly, and slid the folder across the desk. "Just a few restructuring papers," she said. "Golden Palm is entering a new phase. International governance, voting simplification, that sort of thing. Malik said you'd sign." Ayana did not touch the pen. She opened the folder. The language was dense, but the intention was clear enough. Transfer of expanded operational control. Dilution protections that somehow did not protect her. Board mechanics designed to separate ownership from visible power. It was elegant theft, the kind done by people who wear perfume and speak gently while moving knives. "I'll review this," Ayana said. Odessa's smile thinned. "Don't make business emotional, my dear." Ayana looked up. "Then don't bring emotion disguised as business into my office." Odessa stood. "You have always mistaken being useful for being irreplaceable." After she left, Ayana locked the papers in her drawer. Then she opened her safe and took out a sealed envelope she had not needed in years. Inside were copies of the trust structure, land records, founder declarations, private shareholder instruments, and the controlling ownership framework created when Golden Palm was still just one property and fear of failure required quiet protection. Mr. Kamau had prepared it all. Every asset, every title, every controlling right. All of it tied not to Malik, not to the family, not even to the public holding structure. To Ayanna. She was not just founder. She was the final key. She did not tell Malik because once, long ago, he had promised never to confuse being seen with being entitled. And because love sometimes makes a woman believe a man does not need to be tested where power is concerned. That was her mistake. 2 weeks before the anniversary gala, Ayanna returned late to the penthouse from a site visit. The lights in Malik's office were on. She heard voices and slowed. The door was partly open. Malik was inside with Talia and Sardé. They were laughing over champagne and seating charts. Sardé sat on the edge of the desk, crossed ankles shining beneath a metallic dress. Talia was holding mock-ups for the gala screen visuals. Ayanna heard her own name. Then she heard Malik say, "After the anniversary, we make it official. We phase Ayanna out quietly. Say she's stepping back for health and philanthropy. Nobody wants a complicated founder story anyway." Sardé laughed softly. "And what am I?" Malik smiled at her reflection in the window. "You," he said, "are what the brand should look like now. Not what it should build like. Not what made it possible. Look like." Ayanna stood in the hallway, holding rolled-up plans so tightly the paper bent. Talia said, "If Ayanna pushes back?" Malik took a sip. "She won't. Quiet women always think dignity means disappearing." That sentence entered Ayanna like cold metal. She backed away before they saw her, went downstairs, sat in her car in the underground garage, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel the full size of what had happened. Not just the affair, not just the disrespect, the erasure. The assumption that because she had chosen not to perform ownership, she no longer possessed it. That night she went home to the coastal house she still kept in her own name. Not the penthouse, not the city. Home. She sat at the small writing desk facing the water, put the brass key in front of her, and cried the kind of cry that makes no sound but leaves you older by morning. She thought about leaving it all. Not the money, the war. She thought about walking away and letting the world discover too late what it had applauded. She thought about how tired she was. Tired of translating herself into rooms that preferred men. Tired of carrying elegance for people who confused it with weakness. Tired of being married to a man who had started using her silence as storage for his own lies. Then her phone rang. Mr. Kamau. He had been her legal advisor since the second property. He knew every structure, every signature, every buried protection. He also knew her well enough to hear exhaustion before she named it. "Ayanna," he said, "I need to ask you one question." She leaned back and closed her eyes. "All right." "Did you build this empire to hand it over to people who despise the hands that built it?" She was quiet. Then she said, "No." "Good," he replied. "Then come to the gala and bring your key." That was all. He hung up. Ayanna stared at the phone, then at the brass key, then at the horizon darkening beyond the glass. Slowly, Something steadied inside her. Not rage. Rage burns too fast. This was older than rage, clearer. The kind of strength that returns when a woman finally stops asking whether truth will be convenient for others. She stood, opened the safe, took out the full file, and prepared for the anniversary gala. Now we return to the ballroom, the champagne, the cameras, the mistress on the screen. The family smiling like history had already been edited. Malik was in the middle of his speech when the back doors opened. The sound was small, but certain silences are louder than applause. Ayana stepped into the room, wearing a fitted midnight blue gown with long sleeves and no jewelry except tiny pearl studs and the brass key hidden beneath the fabric at her chest. She did not look like scandal. She looked like authority that had stopped asking permission to be visible. The room began to shift. A few heads turned, then more. Whispers moved table to table like wind through dry leaves. Malik saw her and faltered for half a second. Only half. He recovered quickly enough for most people not to notice, but Ayana noticed. Odessa stepped forward first. "This part of the program is restricted," she said quietly, smiling with her mouth and nothing else. Ayana met her eyes. So was my patience. Then she kept walking. Talia signaled frantically to the AV team. Sade's smile stiffened. Malik laughed into the microphone. "My wife is feeling sentimental tonight," he said. "You know how anniversaries can be." A few people chuckled because cowardice often sounds like politeness in expensive rooms. Ayana walked up the steps to the stage. She stopped beside Malik and held out her hand for the microphone. He did not give it to her, so she took it. The room went still. Ayana looked at the audience, at the investors who had praised Malik's vision, at the socialites who had asked Sade for selfies while walking past the woman who signed the staff bonuses, at the journalists who had repeated easy stories because easy stories photograph better. Then she turned to Malik. "You removed my name," she said, voice calm and carrying. Malik smiled tightly. "Ayana, not now." She looked at him for a long moment. "Now is the only reason I came." A murmur crossed the room. Malik reached toward the microphone, but before he could touch it, Mr. Kamau stepped onto the stage. Not fast, not dramatic, just inevitable. He nodded once to Ayana, then to the AV technician. "Screen 2, he said. Talia immediately snapped, "Do not touch that system." Mr. Kamau opened the leather case and removed a packet thick enough to end arguments. "Screen 2, he repeated, louder. The technician looked from Talia to Malik to the older lawyer, whose face carried the kind of calm that frightens liars. Then he obeyed. Sade's giant campaign image disappeared. In its place appeared a scanned legal document, then another, then another. Land titles, trust deeds, founder records, original acquisition agreements, share control schedules, signature pages, dates, stamp seals, names. One name, Ayana Dlamini. Mr. Kamau turned to the room. "For the record," he said, "the sole founding owner, controlling beneficiary, and permanent rights holder of Golden Palm Retreats is Mrs. Ayana Dlamini." It felt, for one suspended second, like the ballroom forgot how sound worked. Then came the whispering, sharp, stunned, multiplying. Malik stepped forward. "This is misleading," he said quickly. "I am the CEO. I run the group." Mr. Kamau did not look at him with anger, only with pity so dry it almost counted as dust. "You are an employee," he said, "a highly visible one, not an owner." The room broke apart into noise. Phones rose, cameras swung. People who had spent years praising Malik suddenly developed the careful faces of those preparing to claim they had always suspected something. Odessa went pale. Talia moved toward the tech booth, then stopped because 3 journalists were already filming her. Sade looked from Malik to the screen, and for the first time all evening seemed to understand that beauty cannot negotiate with documentation. Malik tried again. "Ayana," he said, lowering his voice, trying to sound intimate, reasonable, wronged. "This is not how we handle private matters." Ayana turned to him slowly. Then she reached beneath her dress collar, drew out the brass key on its blue cord, and held it up before the cameras. "This," she said, "was the key to the first room that taught me what ownership means." The room quieted again. "My grandmother gave it to me when I was 16, before hotels, before investors, before you. She told me the person who holds the keys should never forget how doors were built." Ayana looked at Malik. "You learned how to check guests in," she said. "You never owned the keys." The words landed harder than shouting ever could have. Even the cameras seemed to steady. Ayana turned back to the audience. "Many of you know the brand," she said. "Few of you know the work. Golden Palm was built from one damaged coastal property, restored room by room. The service principles, the design language, the local sourcing model, the expansion standards, the guest experience architecture, the staff equity plan, the sustainability framework. You celebrated all of it. I built all of it." She let the sentence rest. "No one took it from me tonight. They only revealed what kind of people they become when they think a quiet woman can no longer defend what she built. No screaming, no insults, no cruelty, just truth, clear enough to cut." Odessa found her voice first. "This is humiliating," she hissed. Ayana nodded once. "Yes, for the people responsible." Sade suddenly stepped back from the spotlight, as if the stage itself had become hot. Malik looked at her, then at the room, then at the documents still displayed behind him like judgment written in legal language. He had relied his whole life on charm. Charm does not survive evidence very well. Mr. Kamau spoke again. "Effective immediately, by instruction of the controlling owner, Mr. Malik Dlamini is suspended from all executive authority pending removal procedures already initiated this afternoon." A sound like a collective inhale pulled through the ballroom. Already initiated. This had been set in motion before Malik lifted his glass tonight. Ayana had not come to argue. She had come to unlock. Mr. Kamau continued. "Miss Talia Dlamini is also suspended from Communications Authority pending internal review. Mrs. Odessa Dlamini's advisory access is terminated. All brand representations involving non-appointed campaign figures are hereby revoked." Campaign figures? The lawyer did not even say Sade's name. That hurt more than accusation. Sade turned to Malik. Quietly, with fury dressed as disbelief, she said, "You told me this was yours." Malik looked like a man trying to hold water in open hands. But nothing strong enough came. Because what defense is there when the woman you replaced turns out to be the wall, the roof, the floor, and the deed beneath your feet? Ayana set the microphone down on the podium, gently, like a person laying down something she no longer needs in order to be heard. Then she turned and walked off the stage. No victory pose, no smirk, no performance. And somehow, that made it more powerful. Because nothing unsettles a room like a woman who does not need applause to know she has won. The collapse began immediately. Investors who had been drinking to legacy were suddenly in corners calling lawyers. Journalists rushed to confirm filings. One travel editor deleted a scheduled post praising Malik's leadership. A minister's aide quietly moved his principal toward the exit. The room was not just embarrassed, it was rearranging itself around truth. In the hallway outside, Malik caught up with Ayana near the private elevator. His face had lost all shine. He reached for her arm. She stepped back before he touched her. "Ayana, listen to me." "No," she said. "You have had 15 years of that privilege." His voice cracked. "I made mistakes. You made a habit. I built that company with you." She held his gaze. "No. You stood in front of what I built and mistook visibility for ownership." He looked suddenly smaller, not because he had changed size, but because truth had removed the platform under him. "What do I do now?" he whispered. Ayana's face did not harden. It became something sadder. "Honest. The same thing I would have done," she said. "Learn how to live without stealing credit from the hands that feed your life." Then she walked into the elevator. He did not follow. Sade left before the gala ended. Talia spent the next week fighting stories she could not control. Odessa called relatives, pastors, old friends, anyone who might help turn humiliation into sympathy. But sympathy is expensive when arrogance has been billing people for years. The board moved quickly. The paperwork held. The asset structure held. The land holdings held. The voting control held. Because Ayana had built carefully long before Malik learned to enjoy headlines. Within days, the empire everyone assumed belonged to a charismatic man was publicly restored to the woman who had always owned it. And then Ayana did something no one expected. She did not spend the next 6 months doing interviews about betrayal. She did not parade revenge across magazine covers. She did not host a lavish comeback party. She went back to the coast, back to the town where hospitality still meant remembering who takes sugar and who takes silence. She reopened Mama Zuri's old guest house, which had been closed for years. Not as a museum, not as a vanity project, as a training house. A place where young women from overlooked towns could learn hospitality, finance, property operations, design thinking, and ownership ethics. Not just how to serve, how to build, how to negotiate, how to read contracts, how to hold keys. On the wall of the small reception room, framed simply, was the brass key on its blue cord beside one sentence. "The hand that builds the door should never be locked outside." Ayana still ran Golden Palm, of course, but differently. She promoted real operators. She placed local women in executive tracks. She changed the board culture. She built scholarship pipelines. She established a founder's trust for staff children. And at every new property, she visited the service entrances first, not the penthouses. Because she knew where the real backbone of hospitality lived. Months later, a young trainee named Lindiwe asked her, "How did you stay so calm that night?" Ayana smiled, the kind of smile earned only after surviving yourself. "I was not calm," she said. "I was clear. There is a difference. Calm is a mood. Clarity is a decision." Lindiwe looked at the framed key. "Did you always know you would win?" Ayana shook her head. "No. I only knew I would not abandon what I built to make dishonest people more comfortable. That is the lesson, isn't it? Not that wealth protects you. It does not. Not that marriage guarantees loyalty. It does not. Not that quiet people are harmless. Please. Some of the strongest people on earth are simply too busy building to announce themselves every 5 minutes. The real lesson is this. If someone mistakes your grace for weakness, let them. If someone thinks your silence means you have no proof, let them. If someone enjoys the spotlight so much they forget who paid the electric bill, let them. Because one day, they may stand in a room full of witnesses and discover that the woman they pushed to the back was the only reason the room existed. Malik lost his position, his reputation, his borrowed throne. But Ayanna did not destroy him. She simply stopped carrying him. And there is a difference. A devastating difference. So if this story moved you, let me ask you something. Was Ayanna too quiet for too long? Or was her silence exactly what gave her the power to choose the perfect moment? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe the people who build in silence deserve their flowers too, like this video, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to remember one thing tonight. The keys always matter more than the applause.